Hello and welcome back to the Tough Rugby Podcast. I'm pleased to announce I got the usual man in the studio. Zach, how are you?
Not too bad, man. It's great to be here this morning. Actually, I'm quite excited for this pod. Very excited.
Yeah, we've actually got a special guest on the line, Ben Ibrahim. How are you?
Good, thanks, Alistair. Zach, good to see you both. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure, man.
So Ben is actually a manager, a general and team manager of a club out in Malaysia who compete in the Global Rapid Rugby tournament. We've just got him on to kind of chat about kind of rugby down at those lower levels and that competition in particular. So we'll just open the floor up to you, Ben, and just tell us all about that competition and the club that you're involved with.
Yeah, thanks, boys. Thanks for having me on. It's a real honor and pleasure to be on here. And I must say your podcast is really, really good because it really goes down to grassroots and other things. And no disrespect, that's something other podcasts don't do. So it's nice to see how the other side of the world's grassroots programs are running. But in terms of Global Rapid Rugby, just a bit of a story here about Global Rapid Rugby. It's a very interesting competition. It's actually owned by the same team, by the Western Force team, if you know them. Mm-hmm. Western Force in Super Rugby. They are owned by a billionaire mining magnate, a guy called Andrew Forrest. A lot of people call him Twiggy. And apparently he does not like to be called Twiggy, so I always call him Andrew. He's a very nice guy, and he loves rugby. He loves Western Australian sport. So just a bit of a backstory. I'll try not to make it sound like a grandpa story. But in 2017, I think it was, that Super Rugby trimmed their teams, from the Sanzar competition of South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and Western Force got the chopping block. And Andrew, as a very passionate person, did not take that lightly. He, took them to the took them to the cleaners and said, "You can't do this. It's not good." And Western Australia is a very Australian Aussie rules playing state. Rugby is probably the third or fourth sport over there, but it doesn't really matter because every sport in Australia is a religion. So, and he was really upset about that. So he just said to them, "Okay, if you're going to do that, I'm going to set up my own rugby competition with my own rules, which will benefit my team, the Western Force." So he set up a team called a league called Global Rapid Rugby. And he was very innovative that he wanted to do it through the lens of Asia. Okay, so there'll be an Asian team, but 90% of the players would be from the tier 1 rugby nations. So I don't know how it happened, because in 2018, I was interviewed for the CEO of the Malaysian Rugby Union job. I used to be the high performance manager at the Malaysian National Institute of Sport. And after I left that job, I was looking for a job, and Malaysian Rugby Union knocked on my door. It was looking very positive, but a few things didn't fall into place. So Malaysian Rugby Union said to me, "Ben, you went to school in Australia. I went to boarding school in Australia. You're a former rugby referee. You're not a biased guy. You're not biased to any club here in Malaysia. Can you help us give birth to Global Rapid Rugby? A bit of your own time. We can't pay you. But, if you manage to bring this to light, there will be some, there's a chance to make a salary and a living." Mm-hmm. So we did Global Rapid Rugby which is run by a former Wallaby, Matt Hodgson, the director of rugby right there. Hodjo, as we call him. Hodjo paired us up with Valke, Valke, a Currie Cup B team in South Africa. We're trying to get back in Currie Cup A, and they want to use this competition as a development competition to groom younger players for their Currie Cup. And you know what South Africa is like. The Currie Cup is the god of all competitions. Yeah. So that was very nice. It was a very nice amalgamation. We Malaysia want to play in a World Cup. We want to catch up to Japan, but we need a world-class league in our own backyard. Mm-hmm. And we thought Global Rapid Rugby was the perfect antidote for that, to upskill our local players. And there will only be 5 or 6 players, or there were 5 or 6 players selected. And there was a bunch of Bocky guys who probably never heard of Malaysia before. And in 2019, we came together to play an exhibition game against the Western Force. They beat us quite a bit, I won't lie to you. And in 2020, in the first round on March 14th last year, we played them again. We lost again, but the gap was a lot closer. But the thing about Global Rapid Rugby, lads, is that it's running rugby to the max. There's hardly any kicking. If you're in your own 22, you can't kick it out. If you run from 122 and score a try while being tackled at the same time, you score a 9-point power try. So it's really, really encouraging less kicking, really rapid running rugby, and that's an entertaining spectacle in itself.
Yeah, no, it says it in the name, I guess. It's very interesting. How many teams then were in your league last year?
Yeah, well, we were very lucky. Malaysia Valke, the whole world wanted to get in, and we were talking about the likes of the Japan and Robbie Deans, the former Wallaby coach. He's also an ally of Global Rapid Rugby. He was also sieving out teams. Matt Hodgson has got some great contacts. So the whole wide world was trying to get in to this competition. Fortunately, Global Rapid Rugby saw us, and we were very loyal to the cause. So 6 teams got in. We had the China Lions.
Okay,
and they were 95% Kiwi, based in New Zealand, thank God. Because I say thank God because of COVID. Okay. And then you got the Southern Tigers from Hong Kong. Again, basically that was a lot of expats based in Hong Kong and like guys who played to a very, very high level, Heineken Cup at that level. Wow. There was us, there was the team from Fiji, there was the team from Western Samoa, and obviously the Western Force. So there were 6 teams. Yeah, but it would have easily grown to 8 or 10. There was a lot of teams, could have been even 12. Yeah.
That's absolutely fascinating. And so I guess my first question is logistically, obviously if we take this year out of it, just kind of obviously with the coronavirus pandemic, has just kind of messed up sport across the world. Yeah, I'm sure that's a nightmare. We'll get onto that. But logistically, in a normal season, if we want to use the word normal these days, does that involve then you guys kind of traveling? Because obviously there's quite a lot of miles to kind of cover between going to Fiji, going to Samoa, Malaysia, or Hong Kong. Like how does that work for you guys? Is that traveling about or?
Yeah, no, that was a good question. It was a home and away series.
Okay.
And our first match was in Perth on March the 14th. March last year. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a home and away series. 5 games in overseas, 5 games in Malaysia. And we would have played out of the national stadium here in Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur, called it Bukit Jalil Stadium, which can fit 80,000 people. Wow. So we were looking forward to really growing the sport because rugby is probably the 3rd or 4th biggest sport here in Malaysia behind hockey, sepak takraw, and football. I only say soccer to Aussies. So it was a really growing sport, very strong, like any other country, very strong boarding school, public school connections. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a really growing sport. So yeah, I can tell you the whole calendar right now. I was dreaming about that calendar. Okay, March the 14th, we're going to play Western Force. The following weekend, we're going to play the China Lions. And then after that, we'll be playing Fiji. And then we had to go to Samoa. And we'd have to stay in Fiji and Samoa, the Pacific Islands, for 3 straight weeks. So we didn't have to go out of that zone. It would be cheaper with flights as well. And then we were going to play on 15th of May. We were going to play the mighty Western Force and hopefully get some payback. But it wasn't meant to be. So it was a home and away series. There was semifinals, top 4, and then the winners go to the final. Yeah, so that was it. So it was a short season, and I think the first year was all about getting the competition out there, starting it, and then just gradually build and get better along the way.
Was there any bonus points as well was it kind of encouraged?
Yeah, there was bonus points, but try more than like the Super Rugby and the Tri Nation or the Rugby Championship. If you score more than 4 tries, you get the bonus point. And if you win away from home, there was going to be bonus points and stuff like that. So yeah,
I guess kind of the next step was trying to get it kind of televised, or kind of down the line, maybe 5-10 years down the line, you would want this kind of showing on TVs to people.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point there, Alistair, because we were supposed to start in March 2019, but because we couldn't get the broadcaster in time, we had to push it to a year because we were up against a very aggressive timeline from day one, which was November 2018. November 2018, they wanted us to launch in March 2019. And I was like, oh my God, that's an aggressive timeline. But I told my family, okay, I won't see you for a while, so let's get this done. But but they couldn't get the broadcast in place. And as you guys know, that if you don't have a broadcaster, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And so in terms of obviously the way the world is at the moment with the pandemic, a lot of sports are finding it quite hard, and a lot of kind of, if you want to put this in kind of football or soccer terms, lower league sides kind of are struggling a lot because they just don't have the same kind of investment there to kind of get through this period. Do you see global rapid rugby kind of coming out of this like in good shape? Like that might be a very personal question. Sorry if it is, but do you guys see yourselves very much coming out of this strong and ready to go again when kind of vaccines and stuff kind of make it?
Yeah, well, one thing about Andrew's a really great guy. I don't know him very well, I'll be honest, but my interactions with him, he's just a ball of energy. He would come into our changing rooms in 2019 and 2020, and we didn't ask him to. Well, actually, in 2019, I asked him if he could say a few words to the boys. But in 2020, he just unexpectedly came in when we were all like having our showers and eating our lollies and all that. And then he just said, look, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep this competition running. Okay, I want to keep this competition running. I mean, I didn't invest for the sake of investing. I love sport. I love, everything. And he came very genuine, very nice guy. And in the video link that I sent you, you can see some of his speech in our changing room. And he's doing very well for himself. Apparently he's donated a lot of vaccination masks, resources for Western Australia for the COVID, and he did it out of his own pocket. He's not a politician or anything like that. He just likes to help people. He's given a lot of money to a lot of NGOs in Australia and around the world. So yeah, I mean, unless Andrew comes into a financial challenge, I never say never, it could happen. I don't think so. I speak to Global Rapid Rugby very frequently. They said, look, the only reason we can't start the competition this year is because of the borders. You can't come into Malaysia. You can't come into Hong Kong. You can't come into China. You can, I think, but not many people want to. It's hard to travel to Fiji and Samoa. I mean, the quarantine process in Australia is very stringent if you want to go to play in Australia. I mean, we explored every different avenue, went to keep the competition alive. We thought about having a World Cup format and have everything in Perth. But again, that would have broken a few budgets. So, yeah, I mean, it's really hard. It's a very good question that you've asked, and there's nothing personal about it. It's a valid question. If I were in your shoes, I would ask exactly the same question. But I like to call him Uncle Andrew. He's a very nice guy. Uncle Andrew says, I've got the cash, then the competition runs. If he says, look, I don't have the resources, then the competition doesn't run, because there is a bit of seed money to be thrown at this. So the ball is very much in Andrew's court, but he's a very nice guy, super helpful guy. He's the type of guy that will come up to you and say, look, if you need my name to open the conversation from a business development point of view, go ahead. He's very open that way, very nice, very transparent. So yeah, he's been very helpful to us, and long may that continue, God willing.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear, actually, because it sounds like, I think when we've kind of discussed the idea of like developing rugby across the board and kind of going deep, not just kind of focusing on tier one nations and your typical kind of England, South Africa, Australia, like the kind of reoccurring theme is like it's the guys at the top that are making the decisions and who are in charge, and it really kind of sets the culture almost. So it really sounds as if Andrew has really set this kind of culture of everyone gets to play, very generous, like you've been saying. And it just sounds really promising just for rugby as a whole, if we kind of get more figures like this in the sport, I think, in general.
No, Andrew is one of a kind. I mean, really, really just open, transparent, nice guy. And like you said there, Zach, I wish there was more of him, like more Andrews like they're out there. But we're very lucky to have him, and that friendship will continue for as long as hopefully.
Just in terms of, I want to find out more about kind of players. So your own team, you told me that you had 90% of your players were South African. What's kind of the standard of those players? Are they like players that are maybe in their younger years in academies and it just hadn't worked out, but they still obviously play at a good standard?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, these guys are very, very much. I mean, you know what the system like is in South Africa. It's amazing. The high performance culture and systems and industry for rugby is absolutely amazing. I mean, they showed you photos of the resources that they have. It's like the English Institute of Sport, really. So, these guys are like, they're between the age of as young as 20 till probably in their early 30s, who are trying to fight on. And a lot of them made the sacrifice to leave their families back in South Africa and say, look, I want to get noticed in a global competition, and this is my time. And they come from that profile. When they went into the competition from a rugby point of view, they had to get out of the habit of kicking, okay, and really running, because South African rugby, as we saw, especially in the World Cup, was about territory, winning it at the breakdown, recycling the ball quickly, turning the opponents in the scrum. So there was very much of that. So I mean, we probably, all due respect, we probably wouldn't have won it in our first year. It would have taken time, but I think in good time, we would have been definitely up there with the Western Force.
Mm-hmm. No, that's absolutely fascinating. In terms of then, Ben, what is your dream for Malaysian rugby? Like, if we kind of put Global Rapid to one side, but obviously that's included in it. Like, where do you see Malaysian rugby in maybe 10 to 15, 20 years from now? What's your kind of thoughts on that? What are you preparing now in terms of foundations for that? What does that look like?
Cracking question there, Zach. Look, we sat down together. Rudy Hubert is the coach of the team, the director of coaching with JP Immelman. Rudy was the video analysis assistant coach for the winning 95 Springboks. So we had some good pedigree in our team, and hopefully we'll get him on the show one day for you guys.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
A lot of Springbok stories to tell.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
He's a good guy, but we looked at each other in the eye and said, look, no disrespect, I've worked with a lot of Western teams or coaches who've come here, and they have a very high expectation, but our culture is a little bit different because of, religion and how we Asians do things, which is, no right or wrong answer. It's just very different to how Europe would do it, and, so I said, look, what is your objective? Be very honest with me what your objective is. And I said, look, we're very noble. We don't BS. We don't around the bush. Yes, we want to get back in the Curry Cup, but we want to help you get to a World Cup. So we mapped out a plan that in 9 years' time, let's just say COVID didn't happen, that Malaysia would qualify not for the next World Cup. When I say the next World Cup in France, but potentially the World Cup after that. Because we're fourth at the moment behind Hong Kong, South Korea, and Japan. And unfortunately, we're still about 20, 30, 40 points behind Japan, maybe more. Okay, but with a world-class competition in your backyard, like Global Rapid Rugby, that would have given the high performance exposure to our players and really teach them how to play the forwards game a lot more, bulk up, really South Africans are as big as Baracus. So really escalate to that level. So our dream was to use this as a platform, as a development tool to qualify for the World Cup. So what that dream is, beating the Japanese, and celebrating and going to the World Cup and being competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it wouldn't happen overnight. I mean, I remember in 1995 when I was in school, showing my age, Japan got absolutely slaughtered by the All Blacks. But what goes around comes around. They beat the Springboks.
Yeah.
In 2015.
So Uruguay as well. Uruguay in the last World Cup against Fiji.
So they beat I think it was Scotland at the World Cup, and they beat some tier 1 teams. And you know what? If they can do it, our Asian brothers can do it. They eat more rice and noodles than we do. So if they can do it, why can't we?
That's so cool. That's amazing. That sounds awesome. I must say, that's fascinating. This is just so, it's great to just to hear your guys' story, Ben, and just what you're looking to achieve. It sounds amazing. I guess kind of off the back of that, in terms of Global Rapid Rugby, you said it was it's a platform almost, would you say? A kind of platform to kind of really spring off. What about maybe say let's hypothesize a bit, 5-10 years down the line, Malaysian rugby's growing significantly, Global Rapid Rugby's also growing significantly, but the main kind of the main rugby is still rugby union, kind of Super Rugby. Would you kind of want to see kind of Malaysian rugby get more involved in kind of, if we want to use mainstream rugby union, or do you want to just see kind of global rapid rugby kind of just come on to the same kind of level as other forms of rugby union? If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's another great question. You guys are awesome that way. And what's this? And it's all the questions that we asked each other, almost exactly what you guys are asking today. We asked each other in November 2018, probably. Yeah, November 2018, over a Zoom call, and we didn't see each other's faces. I hear these two big South African voices over the Zoom call. I was like, oh my God, am I going to be, they sound very intimidating, but, and these guys, like people like Rudy, great credentials, JP, great credentials, my players, really, really good. But it's really funny that you asked that question, because with COVID, I mean, even if COVID didn't happen, the politics of World Rugby, let's be honest, it was going this way, it was going that way. There was talks about South Africa joining the Six Nations. There was talks about the Super Rugby, being disintegrated and just being a domestic competition. So Rapid Rugby, in many ways, was in the nice position to say, come, baby, come, baby, come, and play with us, from a play. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when we played the Western Force in August 2019, we got beaten by quite a bit, but let's just talk about being at the right place at the right time. I was, while I was waiting for my plane to go back to Kuala Lumpur, which is only 5 hours from Perth, in the same waiting lounge was the All Blacks.
Okay.
And All Blacks were playing, because on the Friday night at HBF Park, we played the Western Force. Mm-hmm. And the next day, the Wallabies played the All Blacks, and the Wallabies beat the All Blacks. And I took pictures with, all the Kieran Reid and all those guys. And there was a couple of guys who just said, bro, where are you going? I said, I'm just going to go get my plane. Can we talk to you? I'm like, you're going to talk to me? You're the All Blacks. I said, yeah, but you're the general manager of an up-and-coming rugby competition. So those guys had the smarts to look at you and say, okay, this could go somewhere. I mean, rugby players want to play rugby until their limbs come off.
Yeah.
Okay. So they'll look at every avenue. I mean, they're not really fast. I mean, yes, okay, they want a certain standard to be played, but I mean, they're probably Asian that way. We Asians, we look at the rice bowl first, So they're probably looking at their rice bowl, thinking, well, I said, okay, so be in touch, We got each other's contact numbers and everything like that. Really, I mean, Kiwis are really nice guys. So again, I mean, is global rapid rugby the way of the future? I'm not trying to disrespect any competition. They say European rugby is all about kicking and forwards, which is very boring to watch if you're not a rugby player. Okay. And then, I mean, my South African brothers always tell me it's a very different ball game when they go over there, but they go over there because of the strength of the euro and the strength of the pound. Okay, but very different. But Australian rugby is all about running rugby. England, South African rugby is sort of trying to find its way a little bit. So what is the future? Well, the question that we have to ask: what is the future of the world game? Mm-hmm. As I like to say, the game that we play in heaven. Okay, because in heaven you don't get hurt. So what is the future of the game? Is it running rugby and less kicking? Because after 2007, the 2007 World Cup, they experimented with a few set of rules. I think it was in the Tri-Nations back then, or the Rugby Championship, I can't remember, or the Super Rugby that they were exploring with the Stellenbosch rules. Less kicking, get them out of kicking, because South Africa kicked their way to World Cup victory in 2007. And even though I'm a Springbok fan, and that's just by coincidence, by the way, I thought the 2007 Rugby World Cup was very boring. If I got someone like my wife or her girlfriends to watch it, they'll go, what am I watching? Why am I watching 30 men kicking the ball?
Yeah.
Why am I not watching people running and smashing each other? That's what non-rugby people want to see. So Rapid Rugby is very much about that, the running aspect, a bit like the American football way. So I think what rugby needs to address, but frankly speaking, there's a lot of politics around it, and that's not a criticism of anybody. It's just, where is the world game going? Where is it Super Rugby? Is it, is there going to be one day a huge international competition? No such thing as Northern Hemisphere, no such thing as Southern Hemisphere. There's a lot of money. that we can all play together like a Champions League format.
No, we're big Champions League fans, so we're all for that. Sorry, just going back a bit, would there be any possibility? I watched it in 2019, the Pacific Nations Cup, and it had like your Canada, your Fijis, your Samoa, your Tongas. Would you see a short term Malaysia maybe forcing their way into that before a World Cup, or once again, did you say politics and stuff is hard of that?
No, it's very valid point there, Alistair. We have to be realistic. I mean, the World Cup is a very, very good standard. It's gotten better, if you ask me, especially now with the naturalized players rule being a bit more relaxed, And I mean, one of the challenges in Malaysia is that you cannot have two passports. You can only have one passport.
Okay.
So yeah, so we compared to other countries, we're quite strict on that. If you look at most of our teams, almost 95% of the team. When I say teams, the sporting teams, everybody's there is almost 100% Malaysian. So yeah, we would need to be realistic in terms of how far we can go. I think the first thing we need to do is just let's try to beat the South Koreans and the Hong Kong boys, because they gave us a real toweling 2 years ago in 2019. We were quite close to the South Koreans, but Hong Kong was a bit disappointing when they beat us here in Malaysia. So yeah, domestically we need to shore things up. Big front rowers and big 6'8" locks don't grow on trees here in Malaysia. It's quite a rarity for that to happen. So we need to look at many different things and also look at realistic competitions, the short-term competitions, like you said, before we can start talking about the World Cup, because the World Cup is the vision, the long-term vision coming to fruition.
What about sevens as well? I'd say you were saying about your USP there is all about entertaining running rugby. For me, that would fit quite well into kind of a sevens format. And if you must have about 7 very big, fast, smaller maybe players.
Oh well, good research there, because we're quite decent at sevens. When I say decent, we would be very competitive. We came 5th at the Asian Games, and we won the gold in the Southeast Asian Games in 2017. We came 2nd in 2019. We lost to the Philippines team who were basically half All Blacks. Okay, so I'm not trying to sound like a sour puss or anything like that, but it is what it is. I mean, they had a lot of naturalized players. It was like, whoa, okay, these guys they don't look so like typical Filipinos. And there's a big Filipino community here in Malaysia. So, but they beat us. They beat us fair and square. They were the better team. But yeah, sevens rugby is huge here in Malaysia. But there is, and this is something that Coach Rudy always mentioned very, very early to a lot of our coaches and selectors, that there's a massive difference between the sevens game and the 15s game.
Yeah, 100%.
It's almost two different things. So when you try to push sevens players to the 15-man game, you got to be careful with that, because these guys are backline players, speedy wingers, inside centers, fullbacks and fly halves, who can play the sevens game well, but because there's space to run, literally. But in the 15-man game, you've got 3 yards to move, and then bang, you're down. So it's a different thing. So sevens is realistic, and we love the Hong Kong sevens. It's a spectacle here in Asia, but at the end of the day, no disrespect to sevens rugby. Sevens rugby is a one-off.
Okay, yeah. I feel like, if anything, if you want to kind of, if global, like kind of rapid rugby almost sounds as if like it's the best of both worlds in terms of from that platform and that base, you can really develop your 15s game, but also if you need to play sevens, because you have that running rugby kind of emphasis, that kind of suits it almost as well. In terms of sevens, like, are you guys gonna, assuming the Olympics goes ahead, they might not, is Malaysia gonna enter a team into the sevens tournament?
Well, I don't think we qualify, because you have to qualify for that. Again, we're still.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Not many people do, to be honest. But in terms of, gentlemen, and I say this all due respect, we're very good in Southeast Asia. We're very good. We're competitive in Asia, but we're still a million miles. I mean, not a million miles off. That's a bit harsh to say, but we're still a fair distance of where we want to be. We're still a tier 3, probably a tier 3, knocking on the door of tier 2. But we look at Japan as a real role model. And one thing Japan did, they stuck to their guns. They stuck to a plan. They stuck to a plan. They stuck to a plan. And the biggest challenge in any sport is continuity. You know? So we need to create that continuity. Okay, we lose. How do we bounce back? You know, and if we lose in the development with the under-19s, we lose with the under-21s, it's not the end of the world, because development rugby is about growing players. Malaysian rugby, they did something extremely well. They set up a program called the NRDP, the National Rugby Development Program, which is developing youngsters at 15, 14 years old. And I was the mental toughness trainer, one of the mental toughness trainers, because that's one of my things that I do for the boys. And the first question I asked them is that how are we going to develop some loose head props? How are we going to develop the locks from a genetic point of view, from a nutrition point of view, a dieting point of view? How do we get them to at least 6 foot, you know, and make them monsters, you know, and like not just monsters, but monsters who are really athletic. Because the modern day game, you've got locks who are good sprinters, flankers and loosies who are, you know, really good athletes who can play multiple sports. So gone are the days when you say, oh, I'm a prop, I can't catch, that's why I'm a prop. No. That's changing.
No, we really enjoyed talking today. I'm just going to ask you one final question, and that is, have you got a current name of maybe a player or a prospect that you think could then going forward over like the next, if he's a youngster or whatever, would maybe break into maybe a European league or one of the top sides?
Yeah, we're quite lucky. We've got a few players. The thing about Malaysians is we are not very good at bragging. Okay, we actually good at doing. We're good at doing the work. So if you want to hire someone to do a job and to do all the operational work, you hire a Malaysian, and he or she will keep quiet and not steal the thunder, sort of thing. But we've got a few players. One of them is Mark Lee. Really, look him up on Mark M-A-R-C. He's actually a Kiwi, but stuck in an Asian man's body. Okay, but he's grown up in New Zealand his whole life. He speaks like a Kiwi. Super nice guy. Quick as lightning. A bit light. He's only about 80 kilograms. I always call him a supermodel, not a rugby player, because he's got the six pack and everything. And he does all these funny videos on Instagram. And he's a fitness instructor and a very dynamic fitness instructor. So he's good. He's really good. He's just he lacks a bit of the muscle on the side. There's one guy. His name is Dugro. I can never pronounce his full name because it's a Malaysian Indian name. We have 3 cultures here in Malaysia: Malaysian Indian, Malaysian Chinese, Malaysian Malay, which is Muslim. And Dugro is, I can never pronounce his full name, but we call him Duke. Just look him up. He's got about 8,000 followers. Good guy. He's a big, powerful lock. Super big. Yeah. Unfortunately, he's 32, 33. So he's playing in Japan. I tried to recruit him for our team, but I couldn't because he was contracted with Japan already. So he would have been nice with the locals, and he probably could have started on merit on his own right. So yeah, we've got a few guys. Sam Rentup, young guy, a bit light, but he was always asking me. He said, Ben, and he was as keen as mustard. Ben, take me to South Africa. I don't care if I just play on the bench. I just want to train with the boys back in South Africa. And he's a big Bok fan as well. I think one of his idols growing up was with the Boks boys, and he wanted to be a top class forward like the Bokkies. So yeah, there's not a lot. There's not a lot. The thing is about rugby, especially now, you retire at a very young age. Mm-hmm. Probably the good old days, you retire at 33, 34. I think guys would be lucky to hit 29 and keep still playing. I remember Elton Flatley from Australia. He retired very, very young because of the concussions he was getting back in the day. So yeah, I mean, you don't have a long shelf life in rugby, especially with the way especially with the physical demands of the sport is just getting stronger and stronger. But we've got a few guys, but I don't think they'll be around for as long as we want. So we need to start looking for guys, and that's what the NRDP is going to help. But the NRDP at the moment is frozen because of COVID. So we need to really, really look. I mean, Malaysian rugby people, they're good people as well. They love the game, very passionate. We just got to look at the whole system and structure and say, okay, this is what it is. This is the COVID environment. How do we develop our next Dukes and our Mark Lees so they can go with us for the length of time.
No, it's fascinating, and I do thank you a lot for coming on today. And because like we always talk off air about how it's all about the small steps at all levels of rugby, whether that be your local club, whether that be tier 3 nations, tier 2 nations, because we want to grow rugby into a global game. So thanks so much for reaching out to us today, and we hope we'll get more people from a global standpoint to kind of grow the game for you guys.
Yeah, Ben, thanks. Honestly, I just want to second that. Thanks so much for coming on today. I've learned a lot. I'm going to spend a lot of time on kind of endless kind of Wikipedia binge, which lead probably to other websites looking up more about Rapid Rugby. But honestly, thank you so much for coming on today. I just have one more question, quick question. I don't know if you're following the Six Nations, but who do you back this year? It kicks off at the weekend. Who do you think? Who do you think's going to win? Bearing in mind we're both Irishmen, so no pressure. But
well, you guys beat the All Blacks, and you guys know how to beat the All Blacks. Look, the Six Nations is just I grew up watching it as the Five Nations. So whenever I think of the Six Nations, that competition that starts in February, and it's it's very hard to go against England's Eddie Jones. It's very tough. He's a good coach, really good coach. I've never met him in my life, but he's a very aggro personality. I'd hate to cross him. But saying that, Irish rugby has come a long way, and I've always admired Irish rugby because you guys don't have much to select from. But, on your day, that Irish spirit, that's absolutely kick the crap out of that team and really get low and smash them. I mean, I think if you can stick to that and sustain to that, I think Ireland and France and England is going to be a very tough call between those three teams.
Okay, that's good. Good answer.
We'll send you out, if you give me a address, I'll send you out an Ireland shirt for the first game.
Okay, mate. Okay, where's the Irish? Actually, it's really funny. It's really funny. I'll tell you a funny story. Sorry, I don't need to take up too much time, but
no, you're fine.
This is the beauty of rugby. A friend of mine, Rashid, he went to Harrow, a very prestigious boarding school in the UK. We both love rugby, and Hafi is his brother, and Askari Stevens, a friend of mine who supports Malaysian but who supports the Wallabies. And we were all out. We were at a pub, and we were just like, I enjoy G'ing people up. That's one of my pastimes. So, and in the corner there was the Irish, and I'm wearing my South African top, and South Africa made the World Cup, made it to the next round, and there was a possibility that we could have played the South Africans could have played the Irish. And then they were saying, we're going to beat you. We're going to beat you. And then I went up to them and said, you think so? You in one army? And then I turned around, there was nobody. And then turned like this. But you know what? We were all just G'ing each other up. We took photos together. We bought each other drinks. And I tell you what, my wife was there, and I just said, and she doesn't know much about rugby. But she said, oh my God, if this was another sport, and I think you know which sport I'm talking about, we all would have had broken noses in 30 seconds. Yeah. But rugby, we're like singing songs, we're getting together. I've got those photos on my Instagram. That's why rugby is the game that we play in heaven.
100%.
Yeah, that's it. Spirit of rugby, isn't it? It's just one of a kind.
Yeah. So I have a soft spot for you Irish blokes. So
appreciate that.
We've now got a soft spot for you guys as well.
Yeah, it's mutual.
But thanks again, Ben, for coming on, and
thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you so much.
We'll catch you next week.